This is my first ever sit-down happy hour interview with my first guest after almost 2 years. New changes are coming. Welcome to Happy Hour.
Hi.
I'm just going to jump right in. So I've known of you for a really long time because we went to the same college together.
Yes.
And it was only until a few weeks ago that we finally were able to see each other face to face. Do you want to explain how we finally met?
Okay. It was probably like 6:50 in the morning. I was running, sprinting.
I was sprinting too, you could see.
And I was like sprinting to get water within P-Volve, which we'll discuss later. Mm-hmm. And you looked at me and you were like, Chitra?
Yes. P-Volve is a fitness studio on Melrose that we will incessantly talk about during this conversation. Okay.
Yes, we will. I immediately turned around and it was crazy because, as you just said, I have known about you for so long. So I was like, it's Melissa.
My voice. Well, did you know that it was me from my voice or from my face?
Face.
From my face.
It's a very recognizable face. Like, it's very unique.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I mean, thank you. Okay, so I need to introduce my guest. We have Chitra. You always go by your first name, but what's your last name?
It's Dasapa.
Dasapa?
Yeah.
Dassapa?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but you usually go by your first name as the artist's name?
Yes.
Okay. You're an Indian American girly.
Yes, I am.
You're a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, based here in LA. That's why we're able to meet and do this podcast in person. You're my first ever in-person happy hour podcast.
Oh my gosh.
Guest. You grew up in the Bay Area, and
Yes,
so I
I
want to later talk about your upbringing and your childhood. You say that your music style dances between pop and R&B. Mm-hmm. You describe your tone to be dark and intriguing. You have an upcoming song that you've been teasing on TikTok, and the TikTokers have been begging for it. It's called Aftertaste.
Yes, it is.
And also a song I want to really dive into very soon. But before that, now that we're in person, we have our little happy hour drinks. And because your new upcoming song has the lyrics, fruit punch, fizzy sticks, I got us Olipop tropical punches. Isn't that so cute? It's fizzy and it's punchy. I've never tried this before, but
I haven't either.
let's open it.
Okay.
Let's crack this open. Let's make sure the microphone gets it. Okay, wait. I'm gonna set it down. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
That's gonna be such a good soundbite.
It tastes like tomatoes to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
I don't know. It has pineapple, passion fruit, mandarin, and apple juice. Okay. So,
Interesting.
I was a huge... Okay. I still am a huge fan of Drink Poppy. Mm-hmm. I actually prefer that over Olipop, but when I saw that name today, fruit tropical punch, I was like, well, we have to get this for the theme of the episode. If you're on Spotify watching the video again, you have noticed that 2 of our mics have completely changed, and our entire audio setup has also changed because my 2 mics suddenly just failed during the middle of our podcast while I was talking about how Drink Poppy gave me a yeast infection, and then it just completely cut off. Yeah, so Chitra, thank goodness she's my first guest because you are like a master sound engineer too, so she helped set up this entire new situation. So, okay, we're gonna dive back to it. I was talking about how Drink Poppy gave me a yeast infection, and because we're drinking Olipops right now,
yes, we are.
Because for me, I have higher blood sugar, and Drink Poppy has cane sugar, and cane sugar is notable for spiking your blood sugar. And I also drank 3 cans on 3 consecutive days on my period, and so my pad was wonderful breeding ground for the yeast to grow and multiply, and so I got a yeast infection, but it's over now. Okay. So I want to talk about your skills. You say you're a classically trained violinist, singer, writer, and if you get to look at Chitra through the video, you're also a very hot looking commercial model. So which came first? Violinist, singer, writer, or hot commercial model?
Okay, honestly, hot commercial model.
Really? I guess that.
Yes,
I guess
obviously. No, I started playing violin when I was 5. I begged my parents to give me violin lessons because we had this little book in our house of okay, this is so long-winded, but my parents lived in Europe for like 10 years.
What part of Europe?
They lived in France. They lived in Switzerland. Like my sister was born in Switzerland.
Wow.
And then because my dad was a French citizen, because the area that he grew up in India was colonized by the French. And his dad worked for the French consulate. So they got this choice of, do you want to be a French citizen? Do you want to be an Indian citizen? And because being a French citizen would give more opportunities for education, their family, so my dad's side of the family, decided to do that. So my parents had an arranged marriage. They moved to France. My mom didn't know the language. They had to learn. It was like a whole thing.
And when did they move? How old were your parents?
Oh my God, my mom got engaged by 19 and moved at 20. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. Like the second she was done with college, it was like out. And my dad was like studying in college, and he was like studying physics, and like he's an engineer. So that's why they live in the Silicon Valley.
And so when did they move? When did your family move to the Bay?
Oh my gosh, I think like maybe 97, I think. Yeah, I think it was in 97.
Tell me about your upbringing in the Bay. Like, what was that like? Were your peers all holding violins in their hands? Because I mean, it's a pretty big Asian population there too.
So like, it was actually very interesting because I grew up a majority my whole life, which I think like Asian people who grow up in America, that's not always the case. But like, when you grow up a majority and then you turn 18 and you move to Chapman University that's 70% white, you are very confused because like all of us we were all first generation. Like my whole school is 90% Asian and we were all first generation, maybe 80%. And just culturally, we had similar ways of being obsessed with grades and being obsessed and like kind of scared of our parents. And if you were in a relationship, you never talked about it. There were just like all of these social cues or things, or like the way you lied to your parents that everybody did collectively, or at least most people did to an extent, that it was like just a very different type of community. And it was also very like sexually repressed. Like you never talked about that sort of thing. I don't know, there were many times in high school I felt like if someone knew someone else's business, it was like, what are they doing, kind of thing. What kind of
a person were you at school? Like how did people perceive you?
Oh my god, I think I was kind of shy a little bit. I mean, for me, who was like existing, I felt very awkward. I felt very uncomfortable in my existence. Like I had really good friends in high school, but I was always like adjacent to the very popular people, I would say. So like my best friend in high school was like ASB vice president, and everyone knew her. Like we would go get like lunch in a different part of Fremont where I grew up, and I swear somebody would know her, because it's just like when you're ASB vice president of a major school, like people from other high schools know you.
Vice president?
Yeah. I wasn't like that person who was like people considered the most pretty or the most popular or like whatever. Like I feel like as I went through high school, my confidence raised in different ways because of music. And then I actually always wondered how people saw me, because I didn't really know how I fit in other people's brains.
Yeah. Well, what were the extracurriculars that you did?
So I was in this club called Interact, which was like a service club. I did that in high school. I ran cross country and track for 2 years. I loved doing that a lot.
Do you still run?
I do still run.
Because I think for me, I also did cross country and track, but I think for me, I did cross country, and so now I don't like to run anymore. But I do know people who ran as a kid and they love it. And so I'm not on that side.
It's actually interesting because I think I loved cross country because everything I've always done has been like an individual sport. Like I think of music as an individual activity, or I have, because when you're learning classical violin, like you're by yourself and you're learning. And even when you're in orchestra, like to some extent it feels like an individual but competitive experience, because you're in a group of people, but it's like there is a lot of like I think of it as quiet politics in your own head as a kid playing in an orchestra, because if you're not the first chair, you want to be there, and that's dependent on how you're at every rehearsal. It's a very individual, you're in your head a lot. Like the same stress I felt in junior high auditioning, and you would play your audition in front of the entire orchestra. I think of that sometimes. I'm like, that is the craziest shit ever, because when you're auditioning for an actual orchestra, it's like behind a curtain and individual. But when I was like in 7th grade and we would all have auditions for what chair we'd be holding, it would be in front of the entire like 60 person room of like annoying middle schoolers, and we'd have to audition.
So for people who are not familiar with the world of being classically trained, like can you give a bit of color explaining what does it mean to be classically trained as a pianist, a violinist, a singer?
Okay, so I was trained on what was called the Suzuki method, and the Suzuki method is a 10-book series there are different pieces in the book that are chosen from repertoire in general. There are different methods to be classically trained. This was just how I started. What it meant was that when you were younger, your teachers would ear train you to understand your instrument. So instead of telling you put your finger here, put your second finger there, it was, we're going to play a series of, and some intervals or some melody, some shorter melody, and you would have to find where that is on your note or on your instrument. Sorry. So it was a really interesting way to start ear training yourself to pick up and mimic things at a really early age, because it completely changes how you hear music and can pick up on music. But it is like a book system. So you'd have a graduation at the end of each book, and then once you graduated, the whole 10-book series, and you would have to memorize like the piece at the end of the book, and you would play it in a recital, and you'd get a certificate of like Suzuki graduation book 9, book 10, or like that was the whole thing.
So how long did it take for you to get through all 10 books?
Literally from when I was 4 or 5 to like 16. Yeah.
And were you set on completing all 10 books?
Oh yeah, my mother was very set on that. She was very set. Like I think what really happened was like I was obsessed with playing violin, and because of that, my parents became very invested, because when you're a kid and when you're a parent and your small tiny ass kid wants to be playing an instrument, they have no hope, they have no faith because when you're learning violin in the beginning, it's like ugly, like you play terribly and like it's bad. But like I think when I was around 7 or 8, I remember I switched teachers, and that was when my parents were like, oh, people were like, she has potential, like she can really do this. And by the time I was like 9 or so, like I was like pretty good at violin to where my parents were invested. So it took time. That was a very long answer. I'm sorry.
No. And there's more to that too, because you could have just gone on pursuing a career as a violinist.
That was the dream.
Because you know violin and viola.
And viola.
Viola. I'm sorry, viola. Yes.
So viola is like the same instrument as a violin. It just has a different set of strings, 3 of which are shared. So a violin has 4 strings, G, D, A, and E, and this viola has C, G, D, and A. So it's like a mezzo part not a mezzo, alto part in choir. Okay, people are going to come for me for that. Because it's just it's in between. So in an orchestra, you always have like the first violin, second violins, viola, and then cello. So they take that kind of like tenor alto range and part. So they're also the most overlooked instrument in orchestra, and people make fun of people who are violists.
Really?
Yes, it's like a big, because it's also really sad.
Mean,
like
it's like the Sopranos are always like, oh, I'm better.
I know, it's the same concept. And it's because I think violists have less repertoire is really what happened. Most people were always playing violin, so they had less repertoire. But I honestly, like when I was in college and I really started studying viola, because I started as a violin performance major, and I added viola lessons, so I was also taking those in college, and like I'm almost better at viola than I am at violin. People made so much fun of me when I decided I was going to take viola lessons, and like it was interesting because we'd have like studio classes where like if you had a piece that you were working on, you wanted, feedback and whatever, you would play with the pianist in front of your like studio.
And this is in college?
This is in college. So these are called studio classes.
And these are college students making fun of you. Let me get that right.
Yes. And like it's like not making fun. They just like people would be like, oh, you're jumping ship or like whatever. Like, oh my God, why are you adding that on? And it was just, I think it's because when I got to college, so I wanted to be like a classical violinist, like for real, that was it. And then, but when I was little, I was obsessed with singing. Like I was.
Oh, so singing came first.
Singing came second. Singing came, so this is so stupid, but So violin came first at around 5. When I was 7, I will never forget this moment ever. I was like walking with my roller backpack from LL Bean that was purple with dinosaurs and it had my name embroidered on it. I was walking to my mom's car and I literally in my head was like, I'm going to be a pop star. Like, no.
And
joke.
this is a core memory.
Core memory.
Like you
core
were
memory.
in a,
I know exactly
walking
where I
to your
was.
car.
Walking to my mom's car. I know exactly where I was.
Uh-huh.
I was 7 and I was like, I'm going to be a singer. Like, I'm going to be a pop star. In my
and
head.
that was, you were singing just leisurely?
Oh, I guess I should mention this now. My parents like don't really know that I sing.
What?
Yeah.
What? Wait. It's my brain chemistry has been altered. So we know Chitra as a singer, but your parents don't know that you sing. So what is it like living this double identity?
I'm literally Hannah Montana but brown.
So your parents don't know this at all?
Like, not exactly. They know in concept. They've never heard one of my songs or anything.
Do you intentionally not show your songs to them, or?
It's kind of this mix of both. It's partially like, okay, wow, so many things to digress into. One is that as many people in the Asian diaspora and South Asian diaspora, there's a lot of things you don't talk about with your parents.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things about things that are so normalized to being American that are not discussed. Simply partying, going out to a party, being in college, drinking, smoking weed, having sex, having a boyfriend, not having a boyfriend, but hooking up with people. All of these things are concepts that when I came to college and I had an incredible roommate, but a roommate who was white, who after she was like hungover, after we'd gone out, could call her parents, and that was funny to tell them because their parents had reference of growing up here. I was like, if I'm hungover for 8 hours because I drank too much boxed wine last night, I'm not fucking calling my parents.
Well.
Like, yeah, like it was just like what really happened was that I started songwriting when I was 19. So I would write like poetry in high school, which I think, and I was always like a writer. I loved English. I loved writing. I loved journaling, but I was not like I didn't songwrite. It didn't connect. And the way it did connect was like when I was 19, this very stupid boy in high school really fucked me up. I'm not gonna lie, okay? I can't, like, he really is the worst of all time. But I was very sad about it for the whole first year that I was at Chapman.
And was that your first relationship? Or first...
And I can't even call it a relationship. It really just was like a thing. But like it was a thing that affected all of my formative years of high school, of how I learned anything to do with relationships at all. Like he was like a best friend, but also very manipulative, but also like kind of had experiences that blurred those lines of like friendship and maybe being in a relationship. Basically, there was one day that one of my best friends sent me a song by Yeba called My Mind that I play at every show. And I heard it and I, no joke, played it like 20 times on repeat and I just cried. I just was crying. And I like, while I was listening to it, I wrote my first song. And
at 19 years old?
Yeah. And that was like when it started. And it was kind of just this weird, like, I had hit a point where I was covering songs and then I'd be like, I can't find a song that's explaining how I'm feeling. And it was because no one's going to be able to explain my experience. So like a song fell out of me. And then that was when I was like, oh my God, I love this. And then songwriting really became my like thing, because that was also the first thing musically for me that was a need. I loved violin and it was like a need for me to play, but it was also like, it was very stressful too. Like when you're auditioning into orchestras, when you're playing in orchestras, you have to learn all this repertoire. You have to, compete in different like classical competitions. When you're doing all this stuff, it feels like both a skill and like a tool, but also like something to be exercised all the time. And there's a lack of creative freedom in it that I was missing. So when I discovered songwriting, I was like, wow, like things are really endless. Like possibilities are endless. Like I can create an entire world of my own and just start from nothing and end up anywhere. And that was very freeing to me.
What do your parents think you do now?
Okay. So in concept, they know that I sing because over the past 4 years, I've had different experiences with like A&R people in the music industry and just like been around it to where they understand. And like in a way they're supportive because they want me to succeed and they want me to be happy. But it's only been really recently that they're maybe like, okay, like this snippet that's on TikTok. Like I was telling my mom about this yesterday, and it's crazy because I've had so much shit happen in the last week that I've not told her anything. I told her a little bit and she was like, okay, well, like maybe you should send us the video or something. And I was like, oh my God. I say the word alcohol in like the first 3 lines. I was like, fuck no.
yes,
I was
you do.
like, oh my God. And I was like literally brainstorming myself last night. I was like, okay, which part sounds like vague enough that she wouldn't know what this means? I was just like going through all the possibilities because it's not like something I don't want to necessarily share with them. It just feels like it's going to open the door to a lot of questions about my life that I don't think I'm ready to talk about with them, because we don't have like a relationship like that where like I see my parents in a friendly way. It's like they are my parents.
How would you describe your relationship with them though, and your closeness with them?
I think I'm definitely closer with my mom than my dad, for sure. Mm-hmm. So my parents are very, very different people. My mom is very, like, she was an English major. Her whole family, like, they were into acting, theater. Like, her dad was an English teacher. She has more passion for the arts in general. And my dad is like all science, all math. He's like a very good visual artist. Like he can draw, but they're just very different. They have very different temperaments. They're just very different people. Mm-hmm. So it's weird because like me and my sister are like completely the opposite combinations of whatever equation my parents are. And so I feel like my mom is a bit more understanding because she wants to like sit there and listen, and she's more willing to hear the darkness and the lightness of life. If I feel really anxious, or if I'm feeling depressed, or like I'm crying, like I can call my mom, like and I'm like, I will, like if I'm in that space. But like my parents are very religious. I grew up Catholic. My dad is very religious, and often it feels like talking to my dad turns into like a sermon, or like he just like wants everything to be happy. If I say I'm anxious, he's just like, don't worry, like it'll all work out, just like be happy. And I'm like, okay. It's like obviously I'm never speaking to you about this shit, because like what does that do for me if I'm like on the floor crying, wanting to quit my corporate job, you know? It feels like there's been a lot of time in my life where I'm asking my dad to try to understand me, and whereas like my mom is a lot more empathetic and kind of just like right there with me.
That's such an interesting point you talked about. So are you more like a relapsed Catholic right now? You're not practicing it as much anymore, but it's more of
okay,
just...
so when I went to college, I completely like lost all faith in God completely. I was like very, what's the word when you don't believe in any religion?
Atheist?
Yes. I was like, I identify as atheist. Because I played in choir my whole life. I played violin in choir. I had a couple of experiences in like youth groups that were very toxic and very manipulative. And I was like, the problem was I always didn't really believe. Like when I was like 7, I was like, no way, this shit is real. But I identified with the community of being Catholic. But I didn't believe in what was happening. So it was a little bit confusing. Then when I came to college, I was like, this is not real, whatever. And then it kind of took me this road back to spirituality and back to energy, which I really do believe in. Like I really believe in manifestation, not as like a fad that's happening, but like you can bring energy into your life, and that is affected by what you're putting out. And that exchange of energy and ideas is like a lot of how music is made. And that's also where like a lot of my faith in life comes from music, because that's how I can relate those things. And so I feel like I'm a spiritual person.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you identify more spiritual.
I identify more spiritual. I really do believe that there's like not necessarily a higher power, but I do think that there are things that are out of your control, and that there is like the energy of the entire universe as a whole is pushing and pulling you forward based on your own decisions, but based on what you're giving it. So I think there's a lot of power in like being a kind person. That's a very simple example, but like if you are kind to other people, if you show up for people who are your friends, like if you're doing things, and it's crazy because there's so many concepts in Catholicism that mimic this and mirror this, but when you put it through the vacuum of fear, then you're just afraid all the time. And so it's like a lot of these concepts I'm coming back to knowing that it came from there. But like, it's interesting how like I believe in a lot of those models and a lot of those things, but just without the I really do not believe in organized religion.
I definitely can empathize how growing up in a faith-based household and strongly abiding by those faith-based rules can be a toxic environment and can actually turn a lot of people from the church, from, you know, whatever religion that they identify with. Because I know a lot of friends, like maybe they grew up Catholic or they grew up Christian, but their parents were very militant. And it's like an experiment where what my pastor talked about at church. So I grew up in a Christian household and I still identify as that. But he talked about how there was this experiment where there were kids at a playground, and once they put a fence around the playground, the kids just wanted to get out. But then once the fence was removed, the kids were just playing in the playground. They're like, everything's cool. So I think also it comes into how people can misinterpret like a holy text or scripture into how they want to believe it. And so it's like how white crusaders are like, let's colonize for glory, for gold, and for God. And how a bunch of white people are like, well, I think slavery is okay.
Exactly. And I'm like, those two things cannot be mutually exclusive. I also like, because California has the missions, like I grew up in a city that had a mission in it. And that's why like my high school was Mission San Jose, and it was such like a beautiful, amazing church. Like I played my violin senior recital in that church. Like it has a lot of value to me, but like it was built by Spanish crusaders who had taken from the Ohlone Indians. Like that was that community. And we have a a community college is named like Ohlone. And I'm like, this is really some dumb white shit, genuinely. So there's a lot to be like said when religion can take the place of things that happen that are bad. And we learn about that in like history books too. Is like we confuse things being a positive change when it's like, I don't know if it was positive to all groups to have a mission built where the Ohlone or the Indians, and this happened at many missions, like became slaves to the Spanish Crusaders. And then the Spanish Crusaders got the statues, and those are the people we think of in history because like they write that story. That's why I say like organized religion. I have no issue with religion as a concept or believing in God. Like I respect anything that people have spiritually to be the best version of themselves. I think it's a beautiful, amazing thing. But I think when people get together and believe their religion is right, I'm like, that's like not possible. If you have like 25 different, I think about India that has like a huge diaspora of people who are Hindu, which is like a whole different situation that have like millions of gods. And I'm like, you can't all be right. Like the idea of God to me is very personalized. It was crazy how like growing up Catholic, and it's because like my parents were Catholic and their parents were Catholic. It's crazy how it makes you feel a little bit less Indian. That's something I've also like struggled with, is because Diwali, for example, is a concept to me. It's not something we celebrate as like, that's not part of our religion or even holy. And it's like, those are the types of things that when you think Indian or you think Indian celebration, you're seeing things that I didn't really grow up with like religiously. It was like a cultural thing. Like we do Holi or like we go to a Diwali party or something. So
I want to jump into more of your professional music life.
Please.
You talked about how you started working at a music label. Is that correct? It's how a music label, is that how you say it?
Yeah, record label.
Tell me how long you were working there for and the reason why you left.
Okay. So I had two music industry jobs that were major. The first one is I used to work for Mark Ronson, who's a producer, DJ.
Yes, big DJ, producer guy.
Big DJ, big producer. I was an intern, like studio runner, and I worked for the engineers there, and it was in Hollywood. So when I was 19, one of my friends was working there, helped me get the job, and I ended up basically working on and off for the last 2 years of college. I was like, would come and help out the engineers. Right after that, probably like 3 months after when we graduated college in September, I got a job at Sony Music, Epic Records, in the music video department. And I was an assistant, worked there for exactly a year. And I left because I had a really incredible team. Like the coordinator on my team is like still one of my best friends. It was also completely POC. This was a big deal for me. My boss is queer. She's Black. The two other like execs on that team were both Black. My coordinator, he was Iranian American and I was Indian American. And I cannot even explain how much that impacted me as a community for us, because when I worked for Mark, we were just like around white men. And that was a really hard experience for me to, even though I had a great time, love the engineers, there's still people I can talk to and refer to. I love that whole team. But I literally was the first female and first person of color to be working under that circuit, because engineering and production is a very white man field. So working at Sony in that way was very comforting to know that I was around other people of color. And also just Epic in general is like a diverse label, because the president is Sylvia Rohn, and she's like basically the first major Black female executive in the music industry. So there were a lot of amazing things. I learned so much of the back end of labels and budgets and everything, because I was in this music video space that was like halfway between film and music in a sense. Like I was seeing production budgets and like seeing a lot of crossover. But I left because we went into a hybrid format. So I was there 3 days a week and worked from home 2 days. And I just stopped being able to balance music, and I felt completely burnt out. And I was really pushing myself to like do as many sessions as possible, like after work. And I kept tricking myself into being like, you had 2 majors in college, like you played 3 different instruments, like you were in an a cappella group, like you can handle this, like you can go to your 9-to-5 job and come home and make music, like you should be able to do this, you were trained for this, your high school was awful, like you can do it. And like I couldn't, I just couldn't. It got to a point where I was like, I have so many musical ideas that I'm not finishing, and the potential that I saw that I had was not worth my hourly rate of money I was making at Epic. And I was like, if I can make that money elsewhere, then I need to really honor my art form and what it is and how to get better at it, because I'll regret that. And I don't want to have regrets. And my team was actually very, very supportive. They like have come to my shows before, and we're just supportive of me figuring out what was my purpose.
Were you the only one on the team that was a practicing musician?
Yes. And it's something that I didn't like discuss going into the job, because I wanted to kind of keep it separate. Yeah. But it happened on accident. The first So Far sound I played, I told one person on the team who, like, every week when we'd have meetings, he'd be like, what music are you listening to? And we would just like chat about stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm like playing a show this weekend. He ended up like telling someone else, who told my boss, and she was like, we have to come. I was like, oh my God. Because she's like a VP at the label. So I was like, oh my God. So then her and 2 other people ended up from the team. They came to my show. And so that was very cool. It was one of like the coolest moments of my life to have my boss, who I still look up to so much as like just an amazing creative and executive, to be like, she was like, you're a really amazing songwriter. And I was like, I feel like someone punched me in the gut and I'm dying.
Okay. So when you were at Epic, I know sometimes it's like better to keep your personal and your professional life separate. But as someone who is an upcoming independent artist, did you feel that there were times where you thought that it would be a good chance to like send a demo reel? Or
actually, like, I never did that, because I like knew that when you have like relationships that they have a higher standing or whatever, I wanted to be like, if I'm sending you something, like I need to be really proud of it. And also I didn't want anyone to ever think that I'm taking this job to use it for my own benefit. Like I was like, because I genuinely also wasn't. I was like, I have a lot to learn. Like when I was working for Mark, I didn't know shit about anything. I walked in that studio, I was like, I don't know what any of this is.
How do you press play?
Like quite literally. Because like I'd never been in a room that had like one of those big consoles with all the faders, and like everything was analog. So like we had like physical gear, so physical reverbs, physical everything. And I was like, I don't know how the fuck to use this. It was an engineering job. You know how to like route things and use what's called patch bay and like figure out just like all the inner wirings of how to make music sound good. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I'm a violin performance major.
You can't connect your violin.
I'm like,
maybe a guitar, but not the. Can you connect? No, you can't.
No, you need an electric or you need a pickup. It's a whole thing. So I was like really lost. And so I knew that, like, now I'm really grateful that I worked at a label, because recently for this song, I've been taking a lot of meetings, or I've been having a lot of people reach out to me on Instagram, which is so exciting. But it's also like, when I'm in those meetings, I was telling my mentor, I was just like, now is the moment I'm happy I worked at a record label. Because I'm like, you're really not going to fuck me over. I'm not going to be the one. Like, I'm not going to be the one that gets into a deal that's bad or that underrepresents me. Because I used to think in college, like, my whole goal was like, I need a record deal. All the time I thought that to myself. I was like obsessed, because in my head I was like, there's no other way for me to quantifiably explain to my family and my parents that I'm making it. Because that's also what I felt as like an Indian American, is like, you need to be high achieving. It's like, your parents came to this country to give you something. And if I'm not going to do the biggest possible thing with every opportunity, I feel like I'm failing. I still feel that way. That's why, like, when I went to Chapman, I was like, if I'm going to be here, like, I need 2 majors. I was always under this, like, I need to be doing the most. But working at the label, coming to this point, I now feel a lot more like aware of when people are talking to me about opportunities, or like I'm like, I understand the wording of how you're saying this, because I know how people talk about artists on the back end when you're at a label. And I also know when you're in an A&R meeting and you're just filling a quota of what they're going to talk about in their meeting, which means you're not really holding value to, like, they don't really want you. You're like a homework assignment for them.
And what's an A&R meeting?
Oh my gosh. An A&R, they are the people that find talent for the label.
Oh, okay.
It's called artists and repertoire. So basically they're
like headhunters for the record label.
And when A&Rs have meetings in their label, they have to talk about who they've been finding, who they've been talking to, what are songs that are like doing what, like, they have to be providing that information so that their label is like, knows everything, right? So sometimes when people take meetings with me, they're like, ask me all these questions, and I'm like, you don't want to sign me. You don't, like, you just want to know. And that's cool, because I'm like, I don't want to sign with a major anyways, because I don't think I'm at that place yet as an artist. But
they're really getting just the pulse of the market out there.
Exactly.
I see. That's so cool. I didn't know that you were a double major, because I also relate to you on that front. I was also a double major at Chapman, and
In what?
I was a double major in broadcast journalism documentary, so that's one. So it's a mouthful. Broadcast journalism documentary. Yeah. And I was also a theater major too.
You were?
Yeah, so we had 1 foot in COPA in the arts program and 1 foot in
That's crazy.
the film school. And I completely agree with you that I also think for us, we grew up doing sports, track, cross country. I think being a part of sports growing up, you have a specific drive and work ethic to you, and also being Asian. Absolutely. But I mean, all of our friends, like, many of them are very, very hardworking, so I don't want to discredit them.
Yes.
But I'm just saying from our shared experience. And I've really noticed this about really health and wellness should be at the forefront. And we can definitely crack this can of worms open. But I was like a double major in college, and I had like multiple jobs as well. I think there was a point where I was holding like 3 or 4. I was selling popsicles at the farmer's market. I was working in admissions as a tour guide, and working in admissions as a student. That's probably one of the most
I can't even imagine
busy jobs on campus, because on campus, when you get like a desk job, you can just do your homework there.
Oh, that's what I had. I worked in the mailroom. Oh
my gosh, that's kind of nice. You kind of have your own little spot. But working in admissions, like, you give tours, and then you're giving those 90-minute tours. You have to memorize 60 pages of information. You have to be on the phone, answering calls. You have to sit in on like the information sessions. You have to also craft emails, write emails, and you have to also be part of phone campaigns during decision day. So I was definitely doing a lot as well. And I definitely brought that energy and fire into the post-college life. And I immediately started freelancing after graduation. And I think for me, it was a lot of things happened in threes for me. It's like you have your 3 jobs. And so I was having like 3 jobs post-college too. I was just doing a lot of work. And it was not until recently where I like started to talk to people about this, my close friends, that I mean, there'd be times where I'd finish like my day job at Wired, which was a place that in the end I wasn't really happy at. And then when my day job ended, it was like a classic 9 to 5. I would start editing YouTube videos for my YouTube clients, and sometimes I would like stop my whole day until it was like 3 in the morning. And then recently I got PCOS too, so I'm just looking back and being like, Melissa, what
the fuck?
I'm like also using humor to just mask.
Oh, yes.
But
yes.
And like PCOS has completely changed my life 180. And I think it has like completely made me realize how important mental health is.
Yes.
Because I also for the longest time I was, to be honest, secretly made fun of people who talked about mental health because I always thought like I'm stronger than this. Like I don't need to have this as part of my life. But also I was like, I'm healthy, you know, I'm like everything's good. But wow, mental health is physical health. And it's so crazy how the way your mind functions, it just completely dictates the quality of your life. So it was good that you had the self-awareness to leave Sony. / Epic. And so right now this is where we start to incessantly talk about PVolve.
My favorite place in the whole world.
So tell me how you got started working there.
Okay, first of all, I love fitness.
Yes.
I fucking love it. I used to work at it. One of my jobs in high school, I worked at it like tennis club gym with my best friend, and it was like my favorite thing because I've always been an active person, obviously cross country, whatever. But like, I think the environment that a fitness like facility holds is very special because it's very positive. It can be so uplifting. It can like really change somebody's day. Like, I just like love everything about it. So I used to be a very big like core power yoga girly. Like that was my thing. Loved it. Then when I was quitting my job, I was just like, I feel like I've been doing this for a really long time. And I also hate driving in Los Angeles. I hate it. So I was like, I do not want to be driving 30 minutes to class. So me and my roommate Ellie, we probably like last May, like a year ago, we were just like looking on ClassPass. And we found PVolve because it's across the street from this apartment. And
I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
I drive more than 30 minutes to go to PVolve.
I know. And so I was like, okay, we tried it. Actually, what happened is we tried it. We didn't like it. We were like, this is boring as fuck.
The first time is a make or break situation.
And it is. So I was just like, oh, this is like stupid. And then I went another time and then I was like, this is kind of weird. Like, I don't know if I like this or not. Then I went again to like a cardio burn class and I was like, oh, I'm in pain. And then I went kind of like infrequently during the summer, whatever, when in about January, this is where I say like manifestation is really just real. It is. One day I woke up, I was like, I'm getting a job in fitness, period. I need a job. It's going to happen by the end of the week. So then it did. And that's just what happened.
Wow. Do you have those manifesto thoughts frequently throughout life?
That is like the only thing that gets me through, babes.
Wow.
The only thing. I'm not joking. I'm like literally not joking. I got up. I was like, I'm getting a job in fitness. So I called PVolve. I called Harvey's. I called Carrie's. That's another
the Pilates
place.
Yeah.
I just like, I made a list.
Wow.
I emailed every person, found every studio manager's like, I'm very good at getting jobs. That's like one of my skills. I'm like,
Girl.
I will never not be having a job because I just know how to get jobs.
Wow.
I'm so psycho. So I like, but PVolve was what I wanted because I actually Carrie's was the original one that I wanted, but they were like, you can take like 2 free classes a week. I was like, bitch, if I'm working front desk, you're gonna give me a membership. That's weird.
Yes.
So I called PVolve a bunch, and like within 2 days, I had an interview, and then I got the job, and then I was like, what did I say? In 1 week, I'd have a job in fitness, and now I do. It was crazy. And they also like, you have a free membership or a complimentary employee membership because of it. And I fucking love PVolve. I love it.
My gosh. I think for
It's
people
incredible.
who live in LA or in a big city and want to try what works for them, I think what worked for us is that we were on ClassPass first.
True.
And ClassPass, you get to book lots of different classes from lots of different studios. So, and I like, it's always good to have variety in your movement routine.
Yes.
So I recommend going on ClassPass and then trying the different classes out. And if you want to keep doing ClassPass, like you can do that. But if you've found that special fitness studio, you can end your ClassPass membership or just keep it going. But then really find out what works for you. So for me, PVolve, the first class I took, I was immediately hooked. I was like, the moves are so incomparable, but I was like, but I like it. And so, and what's so funny is that they have their own original equipment that they've invented. Yeah, it's the whole method, and they recently revamped their website. And it looks so
new
good.
Brand, I know.
And there's this one equipment called the P-ball.
Yes, P-ball.
It is like a Pilates ball, but it is attached to a resistance band so that you can squeeze the ball like between your legs or your knees or your ankle area so that the resistance band like keeps the ball there. And when I showed it to our friend Steven, because I have the whole equipment back home, I took the P ball out of the package and he was like, that looks kind of kinky. You put it between your legs. And so when I've brought so many of our Chapman friends to P-Volve.
Same.
And so many of them have actually stopped. Like they were like, this is too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And it really is that first class. Like it could either turn you away. You're like, this is so hard. This is so weird. And one of my friends like, I just don't like the moves. They just don't help me at all. But once you understand how to properly activate parts of your body, like, it's gonna work so well.
And I remember certain times. Okay, so for example, like there's the formation class is strength and sculpt, right? And so the other thing that's very like crazy about P-Volve is everything is really for posture and lengthening your body, which as someone who like didn't really think that was something I need to care about, that's why I didn't care from the beginning. But I actually think it was like the first method that provided the most amount of change in my fitness journey, because I was doing core power yoga before and I loved it, but it felt like the only options of classes were either super hard or super slow. And I liked it, but like I didn't feel like I was having consistent results because it didn't also feel like I was really working out every day. But with P-Volve, it's like there's different types of workouts to fit how your body's feeling. I just love that it's like for your everyday.
Yes.
And like that is actually
I'm all about strengthening the pelvic core now. Like that's all I care
about. I know every time she's like squeeze the ball for your pelvic floor, I'm like, yes ma'am, let's go.
I told one of the recent friends I brought to P-Volve is a guy friend.
Yes.
And after the class the next day he was like, my butt is so sore. I was like, you mean your smile line?
No, it's so funny because I brought my friend who's a guy this weekend to P-Volve, and literally the entire rest of the weekend he's like, my butt is so sore. Like,
yes.
I was like, yes, King.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's so funny. I'm sorry. I think we'll have to move on, or else this is gonna turn. We should send this episode to them.
Oh my, we should.
So I want to talk about your song Aftertaste, and you can actually pre-save her song.
Yes, you can.
Before it comes out, and I'm going to put all of your materials in the show notes so people can just click into it.
Yay!
What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a snippet of her song Aftertaste, and then we're going to dissect the lyrics.
Okay, cute.
Fruit punch, fizzy sticks pop like stardust. Taste the alcohol on my tongue. No, I've had enough of your heart on the tip of my tongue. Wanna spill my guts out till it stops being fun.
Okay, so that's just a snippet.
Lyrics written at P-Volve.
Really? You see, P-Volve is the place for inspiration, for strengthening, for wellness, for success. Okay. So you wrote this at P-Volve. How long did it take for you to write it? And in general, does songwriting, does it come naturally to you?
Actually, it does. That's why it. This is an interesting song for both it being really hard and really easy. So I write a lot, and so usually what happens is my brain like blacks out, and then I write the whole thing, and then I have to go back and figure out what just happened. That's like what happens every time. Or I send it to Ellie and she's like, wow, to me this means blah blah blah, and I'll be like, oh shit, yeah, like that does mean that. Like often it sometimes takes sometimes I know what it's about. So like this song, I wrote a whole poem. Actually, it was not these lyrics, but I wrote the whole poem. Next day I reformatted it into this like lyric, and I had the melody in my head with this, which usually doesn't happen. Usually I do need to sit down and like be playing chords to kind of have a key reference. But for some reason, like I had the melody of like the like I had that. And then the next day I sat down, put it to chords, and then truly by accident I was recording. A huge goal for this month was like recording all of my demos of like a whole bunch of songs that I have. So I was like warming up my voice to record a different song, and I recorded the harmonies to this like for fun. Like genuinely, it was like it just happened. It simply just happened. And then Ellie walked in and she was like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, I don't know, I just made it. And then I took a video of it, like the video that's on TikTok. I took a video of it because I was like, I wonder if my room is like cute. Like I was like, she's like kind of cute, but like she's kind of ugly with all the foam. So like, I wonder what this will look like. And I just like set up my camera on my little like camera tripod and I took the video and then like didn't think about it. Yeah. And then I was at P-Volve. I was sitting in the infrared sauna.
Oh, you got watched
like
the infrared sauna?
Work. Yes. I was like sitting in the sauna and I was like, oh, this video is kind of cute. And then I posted it. And then like,
oh, that's like the best outcome.
And I simply like there was no rest of the song. Like it was an idea and I never intended on finishing it because in my head I was just like, it's this idea. Like, I don't know. So, and I had written a chorus melody with words that were filler. So like I knew I'd have to replace them. That's when songwriting gets hard for me, by the way, is like when I write a melody that I love, but I have to rewrite lyrics to fit a syllable meter that's already existing. That is really, really difficult. That's kind of what happened.
And now it's kind of getting a bit of traction on the TikTok.
Yeah.
Before I talk about the outcome that's happened from really a few videos, I want to do a little lyric dissect.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm so excited.
You're so excited? Yeah. Genius lyrics. Okay, let's do Fruit Punch, Fizzy Sticks, Pop Like Stardust.
So Fruit Punch, Fizzy Sticks, Pop Like Stardust. First of all, I am a whore for like alliteration and for like really rhythmic sounding words. So like fruit punch, like the word punch, I'm like obsessed with in my brain. I'm like, that's so cool to me. And then like fizzy sticks, like the fizzy and the fruit, I'm like, oh my God, that's so hot. And then I just like very rhythmic sounding words in my head. That's like, so it's like stardust, like that just sounds very strong word choice. It doesn't sound passive to me. This is like setting up a fantasy. That's what this is like I'm in a party, I'm in some setting, like with somebody, and I'm convincing myself that the space I'm in is this fantastical fruit punch fizzy sticks. Like everything is stars around me. That was the setup.
Okay. Taste the alcohol on my tongue. No, I've had enough of your heart on the top of my tongue. So they both end in tongue.
They both end in tongue, yes.
Okay. So what's with the tongues here?
What's the tongues? Okay. So taste the alcohol on my tongue. No, I've had enough of your heart on the tip of my tongue. Okay. So the whole story of this is that I used to have a lot of experiences in college where I would be the person that a sad Dodge white boy would trauma dump on me. Little old me. I'm not joking, Melissa. This was like,
what about you makes them want to think that it's an open invitation for them to be like, bah!
I think it's like my energy was a little bit too open. I think like I have this problem where like I love talking to people, and when I'm fucked up at a party, I'm like, give me your whole life. I don't care. I'm like, I just want to know everything about people. I get super excited and curious. But the problem is I also other insecurities. I felt very not attractive and kind of ugly in college because I like am South Asian, and it was like a lot of conflicting problems for me. But so I would really confuse these like conversations where people were basically trauma dumping on me with like, oh my God, do they like me?
Oh.
Yes. So here's the thing. Fruit punch from when I was really little was actually a drink I really dislike. I like because it had such a good taste in my mouth, and I hated the aftertaste. Like I fucking hated it.
Oh.
And so it was always this weird thing that I was like, fruit punch is this thing that I love, but every time I drink it, it leaves me like so grossed out after that I either need more or I need something sweet to like replace what I don't like. That will come back.
Wow, that's so symbolic.
Yeah.
How would you describe the aftertaste of fruit punch?
It's just very bitter.
Oh.
I feel like I'm like left in this really bitter kind of I remember my mom would pack me the fruit punch, like the ones from Costco and the little boxes, and I'd drink it and I'd be like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And then like I would hate it. And it's weird because that concept, that just like me disliking fruit punch as a kid, has been like one of those weird intrusive thoughts my whole life. Like I'll just be like in a grocery store and be like, damn, hate fruit punch. Okay, moving on. Like it's so like just random. And I had basically a couple days before, I do songwriting dumps every day. So I wake up and I'll just write down every word that comes into my head for like a whole page. And this is like how I find my titles as well, is because I see what thoughts are like recurring in my head. And for like 3 days before, it was like aftertaste. I kept having that like that word in my head, and I didn't know like what it meant. But once I know that happens, I know it's going to manifest in a song because I know that it's a recurring thing. So taste the alcohol on my tongue, now I've had enough, was really this like symbolic of an intimate situation. And it's like, us being in this intimate situation, you should know that I've literally had enough of your heart, of your feelings, of your emotions on the tip of my tongue, because I'm responding conversationally. I'm responding to all of the trauma that you're dumping on me.
Oh, so that leads to the last line of the teaser. Want to spill my guts out till it stops being fun.
Yes. Me being like, I wish I could spill my guts out. Like, I literally wish that, like, everything you're doing, I wish that I could take up enough space to do that. If that makes sense. Because it's like, I'm taking in all of your trauma. I'm taking all of your stuff. And it's like, I just like want to spill everything in my heart out until like I don't like it anymore. But I don't have the space to do that because you're taking up that space.
I think for me, sometimes I find it really hard to relate to lyrics because I just don't think I'm that skilled at relating to words in music. But when you said, well, now, especially when you explain it now too, I think for me, I'm like the mom friend of the group. So I think a lot of people like to rely on me a lot.
Oh no.
So it was only like a few nights ago that I've actually like opened up a lot to my closest friends, and they were like, Melissa, we like never knew this about you. So I think there's definitely some power to vulnerability, and it also sets boundaries as well, which is really good.
Ooh, yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why like I wanted to relaunch Happy Hour. It's because for me, I think a lot has happened within the past year within work and also with health that a lot of people look up to me and be like, oh my gosh, Melissa is so driven, Melissa is so successful, Melissa has worked at the NAACP, she's worked at Jubilee Media, she's worked at Wired. But on paper and obviously online too, and with my very infectious positive energy, which I will never have it leave my own personality, it definitely makes people think that, you know, she's so like I want to be her, and and
that becomes part of your identity.
Exactly. And there was actually a good friend that actually sent me a message yesterday, and she said, Melissa, I just want to slide into your DMs and say that like how much I admire your work ethic and your drive, and many times I just think like, wow, like Melissa, I just want to be her, like you're my role model. And I was like, thank you so much. And so I did tell her, I was like, and truthfully, this past year has been much more challenging. But for me, it's just that I never want to dispel any negativity to people, because I always want to maintain an air of hope and joy and generosity too, and like something that I will always continue and strive to do. But definitely at times it can be misinterpreted as, she's successful, she's responsible, let's go to her for help, you know?
That's very true, because it like loses your, like your identity becomes something that's constantly giving to other people in a way that feels like there's no space for you. So
oh my goodness, how much of the song do you have completed?
Song is done now. Like written. Song is acoustic. Like what happened was it finished in these past like Friday, Saturday, Sunday last weekend. Song was fully written, thank God.
There have been some updates in your life that has got you losing your marbles.
Losing all of my marbles, Melissa. I've lost them all this past week. Each day one more marble is gone.
We have to talk about this because, and also something that is really amazing that you do is that you are very consistent in trying to put yourself out there, which which is really,
that was my word for this year.
It can just be really hard. There's just so much volume of content out there, and you could be doing it for many years and it doesn't get picked up. But for this video at this timing, it did get some traction. And so tell me what happened. Like what's happened after that?
Okay. So a week ago, so basically I had these videos, the one that you played. I posted 2 of those. I posted just like fruit punch all the way done to like want to spill my guts out. And then I posted the full version of the full verse. Then last Friday, I was sitting at P-Volve. I can't.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
I can't. It's so dumb, but I was sitting at P-Volve upstairs.
So this is the second time it's happened at P-Volve.
I make and edit all my TikToks at P-Volve. I sped up the fruit punch fizzy sticks, posted that, hit the algorithm. Now it has like 100,000 views on that video, which is really cool. And that was kind of what prompted this person who reached out to me, and I thought it was a scam because he put his name in the subject line, and I was like, you're not real. But I went on his Instagram because he DM'd me and was like, I emailed you, and he was followed by Dua Lipa. So that was the only that's why I took the meeting, because he was followed by SG Lewis and Dua Lipa, and I was like, no fucking way. Like, by the way, everyone should know I am obsessed with Dua Lipa. I listened to her podcast. She was just like one of those first people who had a deeper, darker voice, who really explored dark pop in a different way. And like when I was in high school, I was obsessed with her. Like, she just like, also when I worked for Mark and like they worked together, there was just like a lot of like, she was somebody I looked up to in a specific way musically in my journey.
Interesting.
Of like learning where my voice sits.
And she's also kind of like always been on the periphery of your life too. She's worked with Mark Ronson before.
Yes.
She's also managed by the same person that reached out to you, or
she was managed by him.
Okay.
So they were friends, and then he was managing her pretty much for like a year or so, I think. So that was very ironic to me, the proximity of that. And then we got on the phone. He was very like, I just want to help you manage this release. He told me a lot about himself. It seemed that we had like kind of mutual people, and like that was very interesting, because the person that he was kind of helping him partner this, because they want to start a label management publishing group of their own, because he's worked in the industry for 10 years and they want to start their own little venture, but haven't found someone to kind of like an artist they would want to trial develop. So it's still very much like in this, maybe in a month this will change, I don't know, but like right now it's like in this kind of trial. They're basically helping manage this release, and then potentially also managing me as well. But that happened as of Tuesday, that like last week. So it was like very recent, and then very interesting, because it just opened a lot of possibilities to like how far this release could go, and how, because before that point it was like me and Ellie planning everything, me trying to get a producer on board, me trying to like figure out all of these things on my own, and then it was like, oh whoa, like there's all these potential possibilities opened up. So like it's very interesting how fast that happened. Yeah. Because it was like less, I guess, as of today, like I took the meeting last week, today at like this time.
What about this manager that reached out to you makes you feel that it was okay for you to open up to him?
Yeah. I think there was a sense of mutual understanding of when people, often what happens is I'll talk to people and they immediately use my ethnicity as a way of relatability. Like a year ago, I had Jay Sean's manager reach out to me, and we had a whole meeting, and I felt like a lot of the conversation centered around my numbers growing and the fact that I was Indian, and how they were like, we're looking for the next big like Indian pop star. And that was the conversation. Everything was centered around ethnicity, which is very important to me, by the way. And I feel like this is something I have to mention, is like me being a successful singer-songwriter, successfully navigating the pop music space as an Indian person. I think that there should be so many more Indian musicians, creators, and people that feel like it's okay to take on a harder career path. Because a lot of us, a lot of South Asians, a lot of Asians, like we choose safety, and it is a choice. Oh my God, one of my best friends from high school ever, he's Asian American, and he recently moved to New York, and I was in New York a month ago, and he played violin with me in orchestra. He was very talented, I could tell, but he like went to UC Berkeley, studied comp sci, like he went this other route. He's working at a company in New York. And I went there and he's like, you know what? Like, I want to pursue music. He was like, that's why I moved to New York. I almost started crying, because it was just like this person from my high school. I knew him from when I was 7. He's like one of my longest friends. I knew he was a great singer. We would sing together. To hear that, like, brought me so much joy, because Indian Americans and Asian Americans have such a unique perspective to music and just creativity. The work they make is multi-layered and multi-dimensional because of how we understand things like love and the insecurities that we have and the relationships we have with our parents and the inability to join an industry that wasn't founded for people like us. We're navigating so many different things in the art world as people whose parents didn't grow up here, that like we naturally come with a very multi-dimensional experience of everything. And so me being a musician is also to hopefully help create space and work with more people that are Indian and work with more people in this specific South Asian and Asian diaspora. I want Mindy Kaling to not just be an offshoot. I don't want it, like, I'm like, we should have more people. Also because being Indian, we have North Indian, South Indian, we have like all these different languages. It's like, I hope that all of the people who are Indian in this country can be just represented better in media. I talk so much. I'm so scared of myself.
Amazing sound bites. They're just amazing conversation. Like, when you say 10 years, like, where would you see yourself?
Oh my God,
musically in 10 years?
I really hope that like I can like sell out a stadium in 10 years.
Do you sometimes think about specific stadiums and where you would want to perform at?
Oh my gosh, actually not really. I mean, I want to play Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
I have to in my life. I have to. It has to happen. I definitely want to play festivals. Coachella is like big. Like I want to play Coachella, and I will be playing Coachella. That's happening like in my life. I also just know that like the way I songwrite and the way my voice works, because it is kind of this cross halfway between pop and R&B. I know that my melodies are very specific, and I just think like I have an interesting angle that I think when people understand, they'll like really like it. But I think some of the stuff I create, I'm like a little like, oh, like I don't know if people will like this, because it feels sometimes, this sounds so grossly like cocky, and I'm not trying to do that, but sometimes it feels different from things I hear. It feels like I know exactly where my influences come from.
And what are those influences?
Yaba is huge for me. Huge. She was like a huge reason I learned.
Her riffs are crazy.
That's how I learned to like do, partially because of violin and partially because of Yaba. That's how I know how to riff 100%, because I copy her riffs. And I could copy her riffs because I was ear trained as a kid, so like I can pick up things really fast and like sing back melodies and like figure out the intervals, and like I can do that really fast. And I listened to a lot of hip hop and rap like my whole life. I'm very in awe of people like Megan Thee Stallion, and like even especially like Bay Area rappers. Like I used to listen to a lot of G-Eazy in high school, but also like a lot of E40 and like YG and like all these people, but like also Kendrick Lamar, who's like truly a poet, like really just an amazing song crafter. Stormzy's huge. I love Stormzy. Like I like when they enunciate words and it really like hits you because they're speaking it, and it does feel like this spoken. They're playing with the rhythm, they're playing with the beat, they're like fitting their voice into all the different polyrhythms that exist. Like that is what it is, but it's happening naturally. I'm very intrigued by that. So I think my songwriting has become influenced by those things. So again, I gave you the longest answer that was even possible. How the fuck did I do that?
No, this is super great because I mean we've just met.
I know.
Pretty recently, but then it was when I saw you at P-Evolve and we had that conversation. I was like, I need to get Chitra as my first ever comeback guest.
That's very sweet.
And because I have seen you post stuff on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm sure you can agree that it's taken a long time to get noticed.
Yes, it has.
And I think one of the good things about being an artist now, first of all, is that TikTok right now can be your Madison Square Garden, but it can be very hard to make that happen because everyone's, posting and everyone wants to get out there. But to be able to see suddenly this peak happening is super great, because it just makes all of the sowing for those past years so worth it. So how do you feel now, knowing that the work you've consistently put in the past few years has yielded some fruit?
I'm like very proud of myself, because there's a lot of hard work that goes into this that no one will ever see except maybe my roommate and mostly myself. Hours of recording demos in my room and figuring out how my voice sounds and figure out how to be a recording artist. And within the fact that I'm 23 and I started songwriting at 19, I feel like I always felt so behind. People start songwriting when they're like 14, the whole like Billie Eilish situation. And so like I felt very behind in some ways, but I didn't have the bandwidth to songwrite at that time because I grew up in the type of community I grew up in that didn't prioritize art at all. So I feel very proud of myself because like I always knew that I was going to have an opportunity happen. Like I knew it was going to happen for me. So I just didn't know how. And that's part of the whole journey. But there were lots of little moments along the way that I thought it was going to be it, and it wasn't. And I'm actually so happy that this is the case, because as I was saying earlier, when I see people use my sound, I saw this one girl use my sound who I could tell she's an Indian classical dancer, and I'm pretty sure she's South Indian. I saw her do like a little dance to my song, and it literally like made me tear up because I'm so emotional. And I've cried every day this week. But like it made me so emotional because I was like, that's all I could have wanted. all I could have wanted was to like put something out that people in my own community resonate with, but also people outside of my community resonate with, and feel inspired to do something with that. That's why sometimes when I think about the industry and the labels and all this stuff, I'm like, yes, all these things can be helpful. Really, all I want is to be able to like play and sell out shows and have people love my lyrics and love my string arranging I do and love the shows I know I have the potential to put on. So like knowing that this is just like a little crack in the door and like seeing how people are interacting with it, it just like, it makes me know for a fact like, okay, all of this was worth it, because I have really taken all jobs possible to like get my foot in any door possible. Working for Mark, like I was working there like 14 hours a day sometimes. It was scary, and I still in my head was like, I'm doing this because I know one day like this is going to pay off. I'm putting in the work, even though I didn't know how it was going to work out. I'm not even where I want to be yet, but I'm just really grateful. Like every time I get stressed out, I try to be like, I'm really grateful this is happening. Because I'm grateful for my friend Breed, who was able to fly out here and help co-write and finish the song. I wouldn't have been able to finish the song without him at all. That wouldn't have been possible. I'm grateful for my roommate for like helping me through all of these meetings, making sure like I'm on task, producing this, all the photo shoot stuff, that's all the content. So I'm grateful for the work I've put in and the people that want to help me with it. It like means so much to me, people trying to help me. Because they don't owe me anything, you know. I
agree too. I think relaunching this project, I'm so grateful that my roommates happen to be incredible artists and illustrators.
Exactly.
And they're very willing to help me make this vision a reality. And like what you talked about, how you were able to gain a lot of soft and hard skills from your previous job, and you can take that into music. From me, it's like after working in media for after graduation, like I've been able to take a lot of skills in like pitching and producing and marketing, and I can take that into and just build this into a better project than it was before. Because when I started this before, almost 2 years ago during the pandemic, it was more of just like a side hobby, I would say. But I really do want to take this more seriously, and I don't know where this is gonna go, to be honest. But I mean, I had like this tingling thought in my head. I was like, I think I just have to do this again. So and that must mean something, you know. But Chitra, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Like this has been just so inspiring, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Like actually, like this is like what I enjoy talking about, and I'm so happy I get to do it with someone like you who's like incredibly talented, and like I'm just like I'm so thankful that you wanted to ask me and that we met at P-Volve. Okay, no more. P-Volve's a banned word.
Okay, banned. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Happy Hour. I know it's been almost 2 years, so if you are still an original listener, thank you for still being here. And if you're new, welcome to Happy Hour. I'm so glad that you were able to listen in on my amazing conversation with the very talented musician, singer, songwriter, artist, violinist, hot commercial model, Chitra. And be sure to pre-save her song Aftertaste. And also be sure to follow the pod Happy Hour on Instagram. That is HAAPI HOURPOD. So the username is Happy Hour Pod. I'm going to be posting highlight reels from my interviews that you can always look back on the Instagram page. And I'm also going to be teasing any upcoming guests that I'll be having on the pod very, very soon. So be sure to follow Happy Hour if you want to know who's going to be coming on the podcast. And new episodes are officially going to be coming out every Wednesday. Be sure to follow Happy Hour on wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much again for being here. And next episode, the audio will be better. I promise you. Like, I despise this Yeti mic with a passion. I am so sorry, Yeti. I am returning this microphone. Okay. See you in the next episode. Bye.